The real thief is in this room. Ava Mitchell's voice pierced the tension in the courtroom like a gunshot. The words froze everyone in place. Judge Judy, known for her sharp tongue and no-nonsense attitude, narrowed her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, you'd better have more than just theatrics, or this will be the fastest conviction of my career." The prosecutor, a smug man in a perfectly pressed suit, chuckled under his breath. Classic. Ava didn't flinch. She locked eyes with him. "I hope you're laughing now, Mr. Carrington, because in about 10 minutes, you won't be." The gallery erupted into murmurs. Even the jury leaned in closer. Judge Judy raised a hand. Instant silence. "All right, Miss Mitchell, you've got my attention. You say you're innocent? You say the real thief is here. Prove it." Ava exhaled slowly. This was her moment. She had spent years watching trials, studying cases, understanding every trick in the book. She wasn't supposed to be the defendant in a case like this. But today, she wasn't just defending herself. She was about to flip this entire case upside down. Before we go further, tell us where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and truth, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. The courtroom was stacked against Ava Mitchell. She wasn't some street criminal. She was a rising legal intern at Whitmore and Goldstein, one of New York's most powerful law firms. She had worked day and night, unpaid, just for a chance to prove she belonged in the world of high-stakes litigation. But now, she was fighting for her freedom. The charge? Embezzling $200,000 from the firm's client trust account. The evidence? A direct transfer from her employee login, her fingerprints on the transaction terminal, and security footage of her at the office the night of the theft. It should have been an open and shut case. The prosecutor, Mitchell Carrington, had already won in his mind. A perfect conviction. A young, desperate intern stealing from the very people she worked for. Judge Judy skimmed the case file. "So, Miss Mitchell, let's get to it. How does a bright law student like yourself end up accused of a felony? Walk me through it." Ava took a deep breath. She knew the truth, but proving it? That was another matter entirely. She started from the beginning. Ava had spent the last 4 years clawing her way to the top. Raised by a single mother in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment, she had watched her mom work 3 jobs just to pay rent. Law school was a dream too expensive to afford. So Ava had worked. Relentlessly. She earned top grades, got a prestigious internship, and was promised a full-time position. A chance to change her life forever. But then, everything fell apart. A week before the theft, an email landed in her inbox. "Ava, we regret to inform you that due to budgetary constraints, your full-time offer has been revoked. No job, no security, no way forward." And then, like clockwork, the perfect crime happened. That's what the prosecution wanted everyone to believe. That she was desperate, that she snapped, that she stole the money. But Ava knew the truth. She was being set up, and the real thief had orchestrated everything. The security footage showed Ava at the office on the night of the crime. That much was true. She had been working late, just like always. The firm handled multi-million-dollar cases, and she was responsible for sorting financial records. But that night, something felt off. Her computer froze. The system locked her out. A strange file appeared on her screen, one she didn't open. And then, the money was gone. Transferred to an offshore account. From her login. The next morning, security dragged her into the conference room. "Ava, do you think we're stupid? We have your login, your prints, your face on security cameras." Her boss, Raymond Whitmore, didn't even look at her. The case was built. The verdict was decided. But Ava wasn't going down without a fight. She knew what no one else did. The real thief hadn't just stolen money. They had stolen her future. And now? She was about to take it back. Ava turned to Judge Judy. "Your Honor, may I ask the prosecution a question?" Judge Judy tilted her head. "Oh, sweetheart, you better make this good." Ava's lips curled into a slow smile. "Mr. Carrington, in all your confidence, you forgot one thing. Have you checked the metadata on the security footage?" Carrington's smirk wavered. The real fight was about to begin. The courtroom was no longer laughing. Ava had just flipped the game with a single question. "Have you checked the metadata on the security footage?" Carrington's smirk faltered. Judge Judy leaned forward. The jury sat up straighter. For the first time, it wasn't Ava who looked like the guilty party. It was the prosecution who suddenly had something to hide. Judge Judy tapped her pen against her desk. "Well, Mr. Carrington, you've got 5 seconds before I start assuming you've been sloppy." Carrington cleared his throat, flipping through his notes, stalling. "The footage speaks for itself, Your Honor. The defendant was there at the time of the theft." Ava's voice was cool, controlled. "And yet, you haven't checked the metadata, have you?" Carrington stayed silent. Ava turned to the jury. "For those of you who don't know, metadata is like the fingerprint of a digital file. It tells us everything, the date, time, and even if the footage has been altered." She turned back to Carrington. "So, let's try this again. Have you verified the metadata?" Silence. A few jurors exchanged glances. Judge Judy exhaled, clearly unimpressed. "Mr. Carrington, either admit you didn't verify it, or hand over the raw files right now." Carrington's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, this is a distraction." "Oh, no, no, no." Judge Judy raised a hand. "Don't you dare try to dance around my courtroom. Either we check that footage, or I start questioning your entire case." Carrington hesitated for 1 second too long. The case had just cracked wide open. Evidence starts falling apart. Judge Judy gestured to the court clerk. "Pull up the original security files, right now." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. A tech assistant rushed forward, inserting a flash drive into the system. Moments later, the footage appeared on the screen. Everyone watched in silence. Ava, sitting at her desk, typing. Ava, looking at the screen in confusion. Ava, standing up, then suddenly freezing. A split-second glitch. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "Pause it. Rewind 5 seconds. Now, slow it down." The video played in slow motion. And there it was. A single missing frame. The time code jumped by half a second. So fast it was almost invisible. But it was there. The footage had been tampered with. A ripple of shock spread through the gallery. Even the jury looked stunned. Judge Judy's voice was ice cold. "Mr. Carrington, explain this." Carrington had no explanation. The courtroom had just shifted. Ava wasn't the one on trial anymore. The prosecution was. Ava wasn't done yet. She turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, may I submit another piece of evidence?" Judge Judy gestured. "Go ahead, impress me." Ava walked to the projector and pulled up a printed log. "This is the firm's digital access log." Judge Judy glanced at it. "And?" Ava took a breath. "This shows that my login was used at 11:43 p.m. to move the stolen money. But here's the problem." She flipped to the next page. "At the exact same time, my access badge was scanned outside the building's main entrance." The courtroom erupted. Judge Judy leaned back, expression unreadable. "So you're telling me—" Ava nodded. "My credentials were used to steal the money. But I wasn't even inside the building when it happened." Carrington jumped to his feet. "Objection! This doesn't prove she didn't commit the crime. It only suggests someone else had access to her login." Ava turned to him, her expression sharp. Exactly. Mr. Carrington. Ava, let that sink in. Someone else used my credentials. Someone inside the firm. Someone with access. She turned back to Judge Judy. Your Honor, I'd like to request a subpoena for all senior partners' logins and access data for that night. Carrington's face turned pale. Judge Judy watched him closely. And then she did something no one expected. She smirked. Well, well, well. Now this is getting interesting. The courtroom was no longer just a courtroom. It was a battleground. Judge Judy tapped her gavel, but the energy in the room was electric. Ava had just demanded a subpoena for the firm's senior partners' login records, and the prosecution was panicking. Carrington tried to recover, but the damage was done. His face was pale, his confidence shattered. Judge Judy eyed him like a lion sizing up wounded prey. Mr. Carrington, unless you have an excellent reason why we shouldn't pull those records, I suggest you sit down and let me do my job. Carrington hesitated. That hesitation sealed his fate. Ava leaned forward, her voice steady. Your Honor, we're about to find out who really stole that money. The IT specialist hurried into the courtroom, holding a printed report. He handed it to the judge. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses. She read one line, then froze. Her lips pressed together. Her expression hardened. Then she slowly looked up, straight at Carrington. Ava saw it, the tiniest flicker of fear in his eyes. Judge Judy spoke, her voice like steel. Well, well, well. Mr. Carrington, it looks like we have a very interesting problem. Carrington swallowed hard. Your Honor, Shut it. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Judy lifted the document. This report confirms that at 11:43 p.m., the exact time the money was stolen, Ava Mitchell's login credentials were used. She looked up at Ava. And? Ava took a deep breath. And the IP address linked to that login doesn't belong to my workstation. A sharp gasp rippled through the courtroom. Ava turned to the jury. The person who stole that money used my login, but they didn't use my computer. They logged in from an external device. She flipped the page, pointing to a specific line of data. This IP address belongs to a personal laptop. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, that laptop is registered under one of the firm's own partners. Judge Judy nodded, motioning toward the clerk. Let's hear the name. The clerk cleared his throat, and then, in a voice that shook the entire courtroom, he read, Mitchell Carrington. Gasps, whispers. A storm of shock rippled through the gallery. Carrington shot up from his seat. This is ridiculous! Judge Judy slammed her gavel. Sit down! Carrington froze. His perfectly controlled demeanor cracked wide open. Judge Judy glared at him. So, counselor, do you want to explain why your personal laptop was used to steal $200,000? The room waited. Carrington was speechless. Ava tilted her head. Mr. Carrington, I hope you're still laughing. Because I was right. This really isn't funny anymore. The jury looked disgusted. Judge Judy leaned back, folding her arms. You tried to frame an innocent woman. You tampered with evidence. You presented a fraudulent case before my court. Her voice dropped into something even colder. Tell me, Mr. Carrington, what exactly did you plan to do with all that stolen money? Carrington broke. His lips trembled. His carefully rehearsed confidence vanished. Ava didn't need his confession. She had already won. Judge Judy exhaled slowly, then shook her head. This might be one of the most disgraceful attempts at deception I've ever seen. She pointed her gavel at Carrington. Bailiff! Get this clown out of my courtroom! The gallery erupted as the bailiff grabbed Carrington by the arm. He shouted protests, but it was over. Ava stood still, taking it all in. She had walked into this courtroom as a defendant. Now, she was walking out as the woman who exposed one of the biggest legal frauds in the city's history. Judge Judy looked at Ava. "Miss Mitchell." Ava met her gaze. "Yes, Your Honor?" Judge Judy tapped her desk. "I hope you're considering law school." Ava smirked. "I already was." Ava stood outside the courthouse, finally able to breathe. The sun felt warm on her skin, but the air around her was anything but calm. Reporters swarmed the steps, microphones and cameras shoved in her face. "Ava, how does it feel to win the case of the century?" "Ava, did you know about Carrington's crimes before the trial?" "Ava, are you going to sue the firm for wrongful prosecution?" She ignored the chaos. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. Instead, she scanned the crowd, searching for one person. And then she saw her mother. Denise Mitchell stood near the bottom of the courthouse steps, arms crossed, a look of both relief and frustration on her face. Ava walked toward her, dodging reporters. Her mother shook her head. "Girl, you scared me half to death." Ava chuckled softly, scratching the back of her head. "Had to take a risk, Ma." Denise pulled her into a tight hug, holding on like she'd never let go. "You always were the stubborn one." For a moment, everything else faded away. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, the fallout was just beginning. Carrington was escorted out in handcuffs, his career destroyed. By the end of the week, his name would be plastered on every news outlet in the country. Whitmore and Goldstein, once one of the most prestigious law firms in New York, faced multiple lawsuits for their role in the cover-up. Their reputation was shattered. Several senior partners resigned, and the firm's clients began pulling their accounts. Ava's case wasn't just a victory. It was a reckoning for the entire legal system. The next day, Ava woke up to hundreds of emails and messages. Law schools, law firms, and advocacy organizations all wanted to work with her. She even received a personal letter from a Supreme Court justice, congratulating her on her bravery and legal skill. But Ava wasn't interested in fame. She only wanted one thing: to fight for people who didn't have a voice. A few days later, Ava sat in a small cafe, sipping coffee and reading through law school applications. The door opened, and a familiar voice broke the quiet. "Well, look who's already making waves." Ava looked up and saw Judge Judy, dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket. Ava blinked, surprised. "Judge Judy?" Judy grinned, taking a seat across from her. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check in on my favorite defendant turned legal prodigy." Ava chuckled. "I'm not a prodigy. You could have fooled me." Judy leaned forward. "Listen, I've been thinking. You've got talent, and talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. How would you feel about an internship in my office?" Ava's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." Ava didn't hesitate. "I'd be honored." Judge Judy smiled. "Good. Now finish your coffee. We've got work to do." Ava's story spread like wildfire. People around the country began re-examining wrongful convictions, questioning flawed evidence and biased prosecutions. Her case became a symbol of hope, a reminder that justice isn't just about laws, it's about people. Ava stood outside the courthouse once again, but this time she wasn't the defendant. She had walked through those doors as a woman accused of a crime she didn't commit. Now, she was walking away as a woman who exposed a corrupt system and won. Her victory wasn't just for herself. It was for every person who had ever been silenced. Every innocent person who had been buried under lies. She had proven that the system could be beaten. Not with power, not with wealth, but with the truth. Ava sat down that evening, staring at her laptop. She had a choice to make. The world wanted her in a courtroom. She had received offers from top law schools, prestigious firms, and even civil rights organizations. But none of those mattered. What mattered was what she did next. She thought back to Judge Judy's offer, an internship in her office, a chance to learn from the best, a chance to help others who weren't as lucky as her. Ava took a deep breath, clicked reply, and typed 2 words. I'm in. If this story made you think, even for a second, share it. How many people have been wrongfully accused? How many innocent lives have been destroyed by a system designed to protect power, not truth? The justice system is built on laws, but it's run by people, and people can change, but only if we make them. So hit that like button. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Ava's situation? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. Because next time, it might not be Ava. It might be someone you know.